Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, it's really my privilege to be here today, and to Jeff and Mark to extend my deep congratulations on an amazing book that couldn't have come at a better time. And I know this is just the beginning of a new journey in terms of the trust paradigm. And thank you, Dan, for that wonderful introduction. I was just thinking about all these things coming out my ears, and thinking, okay, now that's a new analogy I must work on. But from my side, guys, I'm a really passionate thought leader on a couple of topics, and I'm passionate about the leadership of tomorrow. I'm passionate about what is it that requires from the leaders of tomorrow to make a much more sustainable future. Jeff and Dan intimated that I've recently been part of a team of subject matter experts and academia around the world. And it was quite interesting when I got approached in the beginning of COVID. We were all stuck around and stuck inside. So I thought, what better idea than to write a book? But it was the purpose behind the book that actually really galvanized us and allowed for 65 people spread across the world to literally write this book virtually. And the purpose was simple. The purpose was we wanted to give back to the world. We wanted to create the best composite set of models and systematic tools that we as professionals have worked on and academia have worked on, combine this intelligence, challenge each other, and share this with the world. And that's what we've done. So all our models are open sourced worldwide for free. And we have the largest database currently in the world in terms of innovation models. And so, as you know, innovation, and Dan intimated, innovation is close to my heart. I want to share two stories with you today. The first one I want to talk about is really innovation using an approach called design thinking. And design thinking has been around for a long time. It was around in the 70s, the 80s, in aspects of it. It really was perfected more so into the 90s through a gentleman called Dave Kelly, who was the founder of IDEO, and his brother. They've been at Stanford for 3 decades now, lecturing about design thinking, building design thinking schools. We refer to it as a D school. And I've had the privilege of building a D school with Stanford and Duke over a period of time and commercializing some wonderful successes. So you must be saying to yourself, what does this all mean in terms of trust? This is a great tool and everything. But I'm going to hopefully in my storytelling today share with you that without the human interaction, without the trust, it isn't possible. These tools are just tools, but they depend on human interaction. So I'm going to give you the first story. One that Dave Kelly speaks of is a pediatric unit for children who had to go through MRI machines. And for those of you who've had MRI machines, been through one, I've been through one before, they are rather intimidating, especially if you're a little bit claustrophobic, and they make that funny noise. So as adults, we really struggle to keep still. But for kids, it's even worse. And so what was happening in this particular unit was the children had to be sedated in terms of being calm and not moving. Otherwise, the whole process, which is very expensive, fails. And this was a real problem for the success of the MRI process, for the trauma of the kids. And so they gave it to the D school to think about saying, well, here's a problem. How do you solve it? And so the first thing that comes to mind is saying, well, in the technology advancement age that we are facing right now, well, let's create a better MRI machine. Let's create an MRI machine that can allow you to move around and flex a bit, and who knows how long that will take. Interesting enough, the solution had nothing to do with the MRI machine. Through design thinking, what you do is you understand a problem. You then go through what we call empathy mapping, and you start to engage with people in an ecosystem. So you engage with the children, you engage with people that look after children, you engage with the operators, and you start to understand each vantage point. And again, through deeply refined questions, you're listening very carefully and you're getting some real insightful information. So what was the solution in that particular case? Well, it was simple. Folks who were at daycare centers came in and trained the operators how to look after kids better. They designed the room in a pirate theme, and the MRI machine was actually a pirate ship. And so the kids were told when they came in, and the operators were all dressed up as quasi-pirates and captains. And when they came in, they were told, you've got to keep still, you've got to hide away from the pirates, because otherwise they're going to catch you. And it was a game, they gamified it. And the results were amazing. 80% success rate in terms of the success of the process. Sedation rates dropped through the floorboards because the kids were comfortable. And I think the ultimate, validation was the kids actually said, well, when do we come back again? And so there's a great example of design thinking. And you've got to say to yourself, if it wasn't for those deep engagements across an ecosystem and those trusted conversations, that would never have happened, because we would have automatically defaulted into a technological solution. I'm a big believer that technology is not our savior. It is an enabler. And I fundamentally believe that we cannot underestimate, even more so now, the element of human interaction and wisdom that we can gain from each other. And so I actually experimented with this. I said, well, I want to do this. I want to do a non-technological solution to design thinking when I built a D-School. And I did, with my team. And we had a lot of fun. We took a leverage finance business. And many of you in finance have been exposed to finance. You know it is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of innovation that you can do in terms of a leverage finance business. It's about deal flow. It's about innovative structuring, smart folks around it, et cetera, et cetera. So what we started to do was we started to interview people. We started to interview people that we'd never engaged with, government organizations, regulators, other competitors. We started to speak to players we never spoke to, and we got unique perspectives back from them. This allowed us to go back into our world and reshape how we looked at our business, how we formed new relationships, new ways of doing things. And I'm really proud to say that with that team, we have been able to successfully double growth consecutively every single year for the last 5 years, just by thinking differently. I was also blessed to work with a young co-founder and launch an edtech that was heavily dependent on technology, but equally, at the end of the day, we were solving real problems for teachers. We were solving problems for schools, for parents. And what gave us the edge wasn't the technology. It was understanding that what people think they don't even have a problem for, when we solved it, they realized actually it was a problem. And so in terms of this technique, it is really powerful, but it is premised on really appreciating the human connectedness in everything that we do in life. Technology is merely an enabler. One of the things I'm really passionate about, and I wrote the chapter in the book that you will see later today, is business model innovation. And I'm giving away my age here a little bit. When I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, well, remember when we had music and we had cassette tapes, we had vinyl. It's quite cool that vinyl's back now again. There we go, there's a vinyl supporter. And now look at how we listen to music. And our kids and our grandkids listen to music in terms of Spotify, Apple, etc. It's really revolutionized. Business model innovation is around not necessarily having new products and services, but it's about how we experience in them. And that's the difference. We fundamentally believe that the academia and the experts that I worked with around the world believe that we are in an age where we won't see a proliferation of new products. We will see a proliferation of the way we experience existing products. And so to go about this journey of business model innovation, of course, for those of you who know the Osterwalder business model canvas, good news is we put it on steroids. 65 of us put it on absolute steroids, and we created multiple views of that. And so when you look at a business model canvas at its nutshell on one page, at the core, at the center, you have your core value proposition, the services and the product systems that support that. On the side, it's how do you deliver that? What is your delivery system? Your customers, of course, your financial costs and revenues that underpin that. But when you start to unpack every component of that, it is people that connects your business model. And again, when you start to fundamentally have those conversations, whether it's with your staff, your customers, your regulators, et cetera, you start to appreciate what brings any business to life is the people and the trusted relationships. We created a really cool, it's in my book, it's a double page. It is first in world. It is a pattern library using Osterwalder's business model canvas that allows you to play with your business model and iterate it in a systematic and smart way that achieves a much more successful outcome. What I did, because I developed it with the lead author, was we started to be curious. We started to look at big giants like Apple and Amazon, and we started to tick what aspects of that pattern library did they use. And they were far more progressive than any other companies we had seen in terms of using as many as they could, but it was within the combination. I think when you look at a business model canvas, you can see that within the company itself, but a company doesn't exist. An enterprise doesn't exist on its own. It exists in an ecosystem. And so we took an extended view and we added some really important configurations. We added the deep purpose and the objectives of what this company and what this enterprise is looking to achieve. We added another great philosophy, and I'm a big fan of the D School in Stanford, but I can tell you now, thank you. A philosophy called jobs to be done. It is a profound human sciences approach to understanding why we behave in certain ways. So that's the, I've spoken about that in terms of the typical business model canvas and the interlinkages in terms of everywhere you look in that, there's people. There's people connections, no matter how advanced your business is. And so I think I may have a picture. There's my infamous pattern library. And this is pretty cool, guys. This is really first in the world. It doesn't exist until we've come up with this. Have a look at it and play around with it. But for me, the story is more importantly around the human connection points. In my experience, having managed various businesses, I've managed value businesses, volume businesses, specialized businesses. Every single one of them, the common denominator was the trust that you build within that system. Whether it's with your customers, whether it's your people, your superiors, your communities. I've run a project over 22,000 staff, 6 million customers. Our number one objective was to not financially gain more. That was an outcome. Our number one driver was to give back to the communities we operate in, to know that we are there for them beyond just making money. And that's a great example of business, spanning far greater in a way of building trust into communities. Of course, we're going to hear a lot later today about culture from some of my colleagues who are certainly far more versed than I am in it. I've done some, with my teams, I've done some great programs over time. I really just love this canvas because it's one page that epitomizes, what we as leadership are responsible for and how we go about leading our businesses and serving people, serving communities, serving staff, serving customers. And so hopefully in these two little sound bites, I must admit I've probably given you a download in 10 minutes on subjects that have taken years to perfect. So it is quite a bit of information. But the key theme I want to leave with you is everything we do in terms of sustainable growth, sustainable innovation is about people. It is not technology. Technology is super cool. There's lots of it coming out. I can barely keep up with all of it. It's a great enabler to unlock, but it's all about people. So my closing 3 remarks I want to leave are quite philosophical. First, I want to leave you with one that says, light the flame in people's hearts, not under their butts. You will see the spirit of the human being, of the person that's in there. And I've seen it, guys. I've turned around the most atrocious performers because I got into their heart and I understood what they were battling with. And we helped them. We surrounded them. We never left anybody behind. Of course, there are those that are toxic and you've got to get rid of. I'm ruthless like that too. Get rid of them. I don't have time for that. If you don't want to help yourself, I can't help you. But most people don't rock up to do a bad job. So light the flame in hearts and not under butts. Second one is, it's a great book of mine, one of my favorites. We were talking about earlier, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I'm sure many of you know that, of a Jewish Austrian specialist, a psychologist who was incarcerated in World War II, chose to go there with his grandparents to make sure they survived. Unfortunately, they didn't. He did. But it really points home to one thing, is that you can have everything taken away from you. Your right to food, your right to clothes, but nobody can take away the love that you have for another human being and the care that you have for another human being. So that's, to me, it guides me. It's my shining light in my life in terms of how I interact with others. And lastly, I couldn't be in South African and hopefully not, the Springboks do well against the Irish soon and the English, but I can't not leave you with an African proverb because it's really powerful. It is one that I'm getting Jeff warmed up to the pronunciation thereof. It's called Ubuntu. Ubuntu, U-B-U-N-T-U. Ubuntu is roughly translated, refers to humanity through the connectedness of others. We are defined by who we surround ourselves with and how we interact with them. And I think hopefully those 3 closing philosophical views again bring home the importance of what this book has to offer to the world and what better time it could be. So from my side, really looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you very much.